Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today... today I am doing a review of a brand new film on Disney Plus called Artemis Fowl. And to say that this movie is foul would be one of the biggest understatements of the century. Just when I thought that I would never find a movie to dislike more than R.I.P.D., which has always been my go-to. What's like your least favorite film, Odin? What's the worst film of all time in your opinion? R.I.P.D. is almost always on that list. I have now found a brand new film to mention anytime anyone asks me that question, and the answer, unequivocally, is Artemis Fowl. Now, this is a film that has gone through production hell, much like many projects that have been coming out of Disney recently. It, of course, was originally slated to have a theatrical release. It then got pushed back. It then also got pushed back to the point where it was at the very beginning of the pandemic. Of course, once the pandemic started, then it got pushed back once again. And then they decided, hey, you know what? Screw it. We've already spent $125 million or so on the production budget of this film. Let's go ahead and just put it out on Disney Plus and just see what happens. Well, I can tell you that one of the reasons why they probably put this out to Disney Plus is because I honestly don't think they would have made any money back on this project if it had gotten a theatrical release. Seeing that this is very similar, if I had to compare this to anything, which, by the way, Disney did for me, when after this movie was over, guess what film was recommended? That's right, Ava DuVernay's A Wrinkle in Time. That's about where I would put this film as far as a category goes, as far as giant, big-budget Disney box office flops, which is what A Wrinkle in Time was. This would have easily followed in its footsteps. Now, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the facts of the film. This is a film directed by Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh has done some amazing work behind the camera. Sadly, this is not the case. I would not be surprised if Disney got heavily involved with the creation of this project, but even though, since we really cannot prove that or know exactly how much involvement they had in the project, he is still the one directed it. It's a 90-minute film, and you could tell it's 90 minutes because everything's moving from left to right. They don't explain anything. Things just magically happen. By the way, of course, there's magic in this film, and it's just kind of, there for convenience sake and just sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work, but who knows? And the film opens up in one of the worst ways possible because you start off with a beautiful establishing shot for Ireland. And I, at first, was like, okay, I love Ireland. Maybe we'll finally get a good sci-fi-esque, fantasy-esque film set in Ireland. No. Oh, no, we don't get that. Instead, we then jump to a random black and white image, because for some reason it's in black and white, of Josh Gad looking like a discount Hagrid, speaking in a low, grumbly voice. And I can tell that the director or producers probably said, hey, Josh, hey, buddy, you know how you do that voice for us, for Frozen? The one for Olaf, and everyone recognizes you whenever you speak in general because you sound like Olaf? Yeah, we don't want you to sound like it this time, so can you just make a low, grumbly sounding voice instead? So he does that. He, by the way, is a large dwarf who gets made fun of because he's large, and he's still a dwarf. By the way, dwarfs in this film, you want to know what they do. They dig holes. And the way they dig holes are by basically taking their jaws off, detaching their jaw, which is an amazing CGI effect, by the way, to the point where you start to eat the ground. So they dig by eating the ground. So you might ask yourself, wait a minute, they're eating the ground. Do they digest it? No. They poop it out. So as they're eating the ground, the gravel and all the remains are just shooting out their butt. Yeah, that happens in this movie too. Josh Gad is in this film. You also have, for some reason, Judi Dench. Dame Judi Dench is once again in another terrible film. Just when I thought Cats was going to be the pinnacle of her career, she does this. Good job, Judi Dench. What the hell were you thinking? Colin Farrell's in this film for like a hot second. Literally, probably like a couple minutes of screen on time for him. Apparently, it took him only 3 days to film it, and I believe it because he's barely in the film. So if you thought, hey, I want to see this film because Colin Farrell's in it, not be good enough. One of the things that makes me most upset about this entire film is the fact that not only is it directed by Kenneth Branagh, it also is co-written by an actual legitimate Irish playwright known as Conor McPherson. I'm actually a huge fan of Conor McPherson. He's done plays like The Weir, which is a show that I did when I was in high school. He's also done some of great stuff that I've seen on Broadway. A great play he did was one called The Seafarer that was on Broadway several years back, and it was fantastic. I want to say I saw it back in 2008. So when I saw his name pop up for this, I'm like, wait a minute, they're getting an Irish playwright. This should make it pretty good, because he's got a pretty good grasp on, you know, Irish lore and Irish mythology. He always has elements of it in his plays. No. Sadly, Conor McPherson either can't write anymore, or his name was just thrown onto it for no reason whatsoever, because, dear Lord, the screenplay of this movie is terrible. And I say that not as being, you know, sarcastic, not as being, you know, hyperbolic. The screenplay is downright garbage. Every character just magically pops up on screen. You just have to automatically accept that these relationships exist the way that they do. There's obviously a friendship that forms between the main character, Artemis Fowl, who we'll get to in a second. God bless that child. And a fairy slash leprechaun slash, we don't really know what they are. They all kind of are melded in together, but I guess we'll go with fairy here. And so he traps the fairy. The fairy hates him, says that multiple times, and then all of a sudden, magically, at some point midway through the film, she says, "Oh, you can trust me. I can trust you. Can I trust you? Yeah, you can trust me. Okay." And now they're friends. To the point where about 10 minutes later, they say, "Best friends forever." That happens. Also, it looks like we have, once again, an attempt. I don't know if it's this way in the book, by the way. By the way, this is all coming from someone that has not read the books. And based off of the movie, I don't want to. However, I'm hearing from a lot of fans of the series, of books that this is based off of, and good Disney, if you think you're getting a series out of this, good luck. Not gonna happen. I feel sorry for you, because there's just there's no way anyone who's gonna watch this is gonna think to themselves, "Oh, I want to read the books now because they sound fantastic." They might say, "Oh, I wonder if the books are any better." But for me, I can tell you, I just have no desire, because now these characters are in my mind. Now these portrayals of these characters are stuck in my brain, and I can't get it out. If it didn't make it clear enough, you shouldn't watch this movie by any stretch of the imagination. Do not watch this movie. What can I say positive about the film? Oh, the score is, you know, serviceable. At times, it borrows from other scores, too, at its most epic moments, so that wasn't much of a surprise. Production design is, I guess, fair at some moments. It's cringe at other moments. Character design, also. It's fine in some moments, cringe at other moments. You also have some CGI in there. Most of it looks terrible. Most of it looks god-awful. I'm looking at my notes right now as I'm saying this, and just so many times I'm just like, oh man, what the hell is going on here? Oh, by the way, another fun fact about dwarves in this. They apparently can also use their beard hair as tendrils. They can just move around in their CGI glory to pick locks and things like that for whatever you might need. Also, it's funny because at one point in my notes I said, this is as bad as A Wrinkle in Time. And then, of course, that film was recommended at the very end. And I will actually go on and say that this film is worse than A Wrinkle in Time. This film is worse than R.I.P.D. This film might even be worse than such films as Unicorn Store. This might be one of the worst films that I have ever seen in my entire life, because the score can't even service the film. The overall story is terrible, jumps around. And then the lead role, and I don't really want to say the kid's name, because I have a feeling that this kid's going to go through what the young actor from the, you know, now obviously he's an adult, but the Jake Lloyd's character from the prequels is what it reminded me of. Where obviously Jake Lloyd was a kid, he was very, very green, he wasn't the greatest actor in the world, and then he got put in, you know, a giant Star Wars film and got criticized for his performance for a long time from the media and from other people, and now, of course, is dealing with a lot of different issues. I'm hoping and praying that whoever these kids' parents are, take him out of film. Seriously, take him out of film, protect him. Do not let him read any reviews. Do not let him see any commentary on it, because it's that kind of performance and it's that type of casting. Like, I don't blame the kid. Again, the kid is just a kid. The kid is just doing, you know, he has lines and he reads them, and that's about the extent of his acting ability at this point in time. But I blame the casting director who decided to put a green actor with no expression, no emotion, literally a robotic character who must have been fed lines and randomly said them. So casting director should be fired, should never work again. I would almost even argue that the director, Kenneth Branagh, shouldn't be, but whoever actually directed the actors themselves, because sometimes it's not always the director that does that, should be fired. Because the performances in this film, even from people like Colin Farrell and Dame Judi Dench, are abysmal at times. So, what do I think about Artemis Fowl? It is by far one of the worst films I've ever seen in a very long time. It makes me very upset to see that Disney is continuing to take great IPs, or at least seemingly great IPs, because obviously I'm hearing from a lot of people that are fans of the series that the books are great and that they, from the trailers, don't like what they're seeing, and everything they're reading about it just doesn't seem like what the books actually establish. So I feel bad for them. But then at the same time, too, the film sets up easily for a sequel and for a series of films, and I just cannot see how they could possibly justify it. They obviously put this film on Disney Plus because they wanted to hide the fact that this movie was terrible. They wanted to hide the fact that this film would probably have lost money, just like A Wrinkle in Time did, which is why you don't see any other films from that franchise going anywhere. And also, to something else that's very similar to A Wrinkle in Time is the fact that they strip out God. Now, I don't know if this is like this in the story Artemis Fowl or not, but in the movie, several times they use the Irish blessing. And for anyone that knows anything about blessings or Irish culture, you know, may the road rise to meet you, may the wind be always at your back. You know how that usually ends with, and may God protect you, or may God hold you in the hollowness of his hand, in the palm of his hand? It doesn't use that instead. Instead, and may a friend be ever at your side. Now, I honestly don't know if that is a legitimate version that's used in Irish culture to this day. All I know is that the most famous one, the most well-used one, references God. So just like when A Wrinkle in Time, which is actually very much based in Christian thought, totally took any reference or any knowledge or any, indication of God from its script and left it lifeless and soulless, Artemis Fowl seems to have done the same exact thing. Again, based on my limited understanding of the story. Oh my goodness gracious. It's been a very long time since I've seen a movie that I just couldn't wait for it to end. You all know I usually stay away from films that are bad because I just don't want to waste my time. There's so many other great films that I've never seen before that I would rather watch. I would say, please do not waste your time on this movie. It is complete and utter garbage. Even the poster from what you're looking at looks a lot like the Wrinkle in Time poster, to be honest, using very similar visual effects. The CGI is terrible. The writing's terrible. The production's terrible. The direction's terrible. The acting is terrible. Every element of the film, every technical element from an objective standpoint is terrible. And other than a few overhead shots of Ireland that actually look pretty well shot because, hey, they have a nice camera and they're using it, there really isn't a whole lot I can say about this film. So I would easily give this film, and this might be the first time that I've given this grade for a film, at the very least in a very, very long time, I'm giving this grade an F. This is a failure of a movie. I would never recommend anyone to see it. I would never want my worst enemy to have to watch this film over and over and over again because it is that bad. It is a pacing mess. The villain of this film, by the way, didn't even mention the villain, uses this weird sound machine-like effect. I don't know if it's supposed to be their real voice or not. Don't care. But it sounds awful. It sounds terrible and cheesy. And at the very end of it, I said, there is no way this makes it to a series of movies. My God, this ending will not end. Oh, and I'll leave you with this. This is an actual quote from the movie. When he was 10 years old, he cloned a goat and named it Bruce. Anyway, have you seen this atrocity? Let me know in the comment section below. And please, again, I would highly recommend, unless you want to put yourself through some torture and watching bad films, or you enjoy watching bad films, you'll laugh for the first 15, 20 minutes because of how abysmal it is. And then it just keeps going, and it never stops. So take that as a warning from me. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching the video. If you like this video, smash that like button, hit that subscribe. It helps out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless. And now a huge shout out to all of my June Patreon members: Albertus Magnus, Animation Commentator, Brian P., David Bobrizik, Dion, Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Wiener Dog Clan, Harold Francis, the Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jeffrey Toon, Kenneth Cameo, Lady T, Laura Story, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mike Jackson, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, Orange Hat Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Out of Step with Reality, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Benton, Tina Bojan, The DJD Show, and Tina B. And also to my Subscribe Star members: Edgardo Martinez, John B., Perpetual Punster, Robert Revo, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2 Cool 99, Darkstar 57, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J. Rod, the Beer Guru, and also Nebanon G. Adams and ZK Man, and Jonathan Carney, and Jacob Juice. Thank you all so much for being a member of Patreon and Subscribestar. And seriously, it really does mean a lot. Helps keeps the light on, helps me able to do things like the giveaways for my $5 and up backers on Patreon and Subscribestar, and also be able to put more stuff into the actual channel itself, including upgrading different components, whether it be webcams, microphones, things like that. All of that helps to support it, and it really does mean a lot. So thank you all so very much. Please, if you want to have your name shouted out or look at any of the other perks, which include things like indeed having access to exclusive 4K digital giveaways every single month, and also an exclusive podcast hosted on Patreon and Subscribestar, and also YouTube memberships as well at the $10 and up level, featuring John the Flickpig Flickinger. Please check all of those things out in the description of this video. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.